Okay, yes, we are live already. So welcome everyone here from Devoxx UK, and also welcome to everyone live on the virtual jug. This is an Ask the Architect session, and joining me here today, I'm just doing the intro and then I'm walking off. Joining me here today, we have Mark Reinhold, Chief Architect of Java in Oracle. We also have Trisha G, who is the developer advocate for JetBrains, specifically IntelliJ. And we also have little Amy. Little Amy's here. And Trisha's going to be asking the questions of Mark. Mark's going to be giving the answer. And if Amy disapproves, she will cry. And that will look terrible for Oracle, wouldn't it? Making a poor child cry. But we'll see. We have been crowdsourcing questions, which we now have, and Trisha's got them. We will be taking follow-up questions if Mark doesn't give a full answer, which I'm sure Trish will hold Mark to. So we will take follow-up questions. We'll take it on the virtual jug on IRC, and we'll take it in the room as well. For now, Mark, let me... Oh, no, I need to share my screen first here. My entire screen. Hopefully this will work.
Isn't technology amazing?
There. Okay, Mark, you have some...
Right, so this is the shortest slide deck I ever used. This is slide number 1. And can you guess what slide number 2 is?
Yeah, you work for Oracle.
Don't believe a word I'm going to say. There you go. Okay.
Awesome, thank you. That was exciting. Let me exit out of that, unshare my screen.
Ooh, nice.
Is that good? And there we go. Right, so over to you.
Yes, so this is going to be a bit unconventional because Simon gave me a whole 30 minutes notice that I was going to be asking the questions, which didn't give me a lot of time for sourcing baby care. So, hello.
Hi, Trish. Nice to see you.
If I have to run out, then Simon's going to take over, and it's all his own fault for not organising this in a more slick and professional fashion. So let's just get on with the questions, because at some point this one is going to decide she's going to go nuclear, and then we all have to just finish. Question number 1. Will Graal VM make the current JVM obsolete?
Yes and no.
That was a quick answer.
Oh, you wanted details?
It would be nice, yeah.
Sure. Well, that's actually the plan. Well, that's actually the plan in a certain way. The plan is actually in the long term to replace the current runtime compilers, which are written in C++ and have a bunch of other flaws in your, old but respected code bases, state of the art at the time, but that time was some time ago. The plan, and this is all going on in Project Metropolis and OpenJDK, is to replace those with Graal. The first parts of that are coming in. We use Graal for AOT, ahead of time compilation. In 10, you can use Graal as an experimental runtime compiler. You can actually enable this and see how well it works for you. And if it doesn't work, we'd like to know about it. But in the long term, we want to drop the old C1 and C2 code bases, replace them with Graal. So is it making the whole hotspot JVM obsolete? No, but it is replacing a big chunk of it.
Okay. So your answer is it depends.
My answer is yes and no. Yeah, it depends. Classic developer answer.
Exactly. Let's see. I've got to read it first before I read it out verbatim. Okay, is it correct that with the long-term releases, the updates will only be available for customers with a commercial support contract from Oracle?
No.
Okay, that was easy. So it's not just about, the plan is not that everyone is going to have to pay Oracle from now on for the long-term support things.
No, you could pay Oracle, you could pay Red Hat, you could pay Azul, you could go to adopt OpenJDK, you could pay SAP. You could pay a lot of different people to do this work for you if you really need it to be done. So yeah, or adopt OpenJDK. You don't have to pay anything. Wow, that's great. So yeah, the free option is still there.
Amy, are you bored already?
Oh,
I'm so sorry about this.
Didn't like that answer.
No,
I'm so sorry.
She saw Simon Ritter talking about Azul on Tuesday, so she's like, "Oh, okay." So
I know about that. Get on to the next topic. Jeez.
I think this is quite interesting. Are there any features in Java that you think might be underutilized by developers in the wild, except modularity?
No, we've known for a long time that will take a while. That's okay. We're good. We're cool with it. So a couple of things occur. One is the Java time APIs that came in 8, Stephen Colborn's work. JSR 310, it's really good stuff. Please go use that. Calendar, date, all that awful stuff. Please, stop using that. If you're using Joda time, which was a useful replacement for those old broken things, then if you convert over to using Java time, which is really similar, because Stephen did Joda time, of course, then you can save yourself, a few jar files probably. That might be a good thing. So
I'm surprised about that, because I thought date time is actually one of the most interesting things about 8, apart from all the other stuff, obviously.
Yeah, lambda, it's just boring.
Yeah, everyone knows about lambdas.
Right.
But date time is a really difficult problem, and the 310 stuff is really nice. It's a nice way of doing stuff.
Yeah. One other thing occurs, and actually you spoke about this in your session today, is the factory methods for collections.
Yeah.
They're really sweet, but it's like a sleeper feature in 9 that it hasn't gotten much airplay. I mean, Stuart Marks has done a good job of talking about them. But I run into a lot of people who don't really, who ask for, oh, when are we going to get collection literals? Well, just go use these factories. They're like pretty much the next best thing.
Yeah, they're my favorite feature from 9, actually. That you can do list of, set of, map of,
yeah.
And some of the additions in 10 as well for copying collections. And, yeah, and I think you're right. I think they're underutilized. I do try and tell everyone this is stuff now, and this is why it's good. Okay, so next. I think Simon is sneaking his own questions in here.
No.
What would you say needs to happen in terms of adoption for the new release cadence to be considered a success? For the new release cadence to be I can't speak at all. I'm so jet lagged.
Amy, can you read this one?
You need to translate this. I only flew from a 1-hour time zone difference. What would you say needs to happen in terms of adoption for the new release cadence to be considered a success?
So we've actually already had some success. I was really thrilled to see when Ubuntu just shipped their 18.04 long-term support release, and the default Java is 10.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's really neat. So I think seeing distros make a non-LTS release their default is certainly one sign of success we can look for. It'd be interesting to see what happens in other Linux distros. I think another thing to look for is when the major cloud providers will shift. Right now on Amazon, Google Cloud, wherever, it's pretty much, well, if you're doing serverless, you're on 8. you want 9, sorry.
Right.
I think this model will be a success when these cloud providers don't just go from 8 to 11, which is the obvious thing, but also provide as an option, well, if you want 13 or if you want 10, you can get that.
Yeah. I was interested in my talk this morning that there was a lot of people on 8, almost no one on 9, and a few people on 10. So it seems to me, I think that perhaps if people went to 9, they went to 10. Yeah,
the 9 to 10 transition is very smooth.
Right.
It was a small release. It didn't have big disruptive features in it. Another data point that's worth sharing is the downloads of the JDK from Oracle, both the commercially licensed one and the GPL ones. The download rates on 9 and 10 have been surprisingly high. I got hold from somebody else in the team of a graph the other day of the first few months of 8, 9, and 10. The download. Kurt, just let me finish the explanation before you shake your head. Of 8, 9, and 10, look at the first few months of each release, and the download numbers are practically the same.
Right.
And 8 was an extremely popular release, and the graph for that goes like this, and the graph for 9 goes like this, and the graph for 10 goes like this. So that's a suggestion. Obviously, correlation's not cause. That's a suggestion that a lot of people are at least kicking the tires. They're downloading it. Hopefully, they're playing with it a bit.
They might not use it in production.
But as we've seen from many surveys, including some recent ones, they're not using it in production.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think that's cause for optimism, at least.
I think the interesting thing is that Java is traditionally, the latest version always takes a little while to get into production anyway, as companies decide, what is my risk appetite, and
it's usually 6 or 9 months or a year, sometimes much longer.
Yeah. With a similar related question, can you talk about the release trains? Do you think people will upgrade that fast? How to get people comfortable with that process? I'm not really sure whether that means people as in individual developers or whether it's organizations. But I guess the question is like, how do we get the community used to this quick cadence? Other than, I suppose, just doing it.
You know, to a certain extent, it's just going to be a matter of time. You know, there are certainly people and some companies to whom the 6-month model appeals, and they'll download each one and maybe even deploy on it. I've heard from plenty of people in organizations that, yep, we're just waiting for 11, and then we'll be on 17, and we're going to ignore, you know, all those other 6-month releases. And my advice to them is you shouldn't ignore it. Understand you don't want to deploy on them, but at least test them out as they come. That way you're doing sort of an incremental migration of, you know, some large system. And by the time the next LTS comes out, you'll practically be done. So don't ignore those, even if you're not going to deploy.
So we were talking this morning about the early access project, the early access release stuff. And I think that the incremental releases, the 9s and the 10s, non-LTS, the 9s and the 10s are more appealing than trying out every EA build, for example. So every time I tried using 9 last year, every week that I downloaded it, it was different, and
well, of course it was.
Stability was interesting, right, and features were added or removed. And that's difficult for an organization to test against. But right, I think that something like the 9 and 10 releases are much more stable and easier as an incremental release, like you say. So they might not use it in production, but they might right, be playing with features and gradually migrating.
Right. Yep.
Will Oracle provide Java tools for AI instead of making a VM that runs Python, for example? What's the future of Java in the AI business?
Java's a general purpose platform. If it works for you for an AI problem, go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure other parts of Oracle are doing interesting things with Java and AI. I'm not personally aware of the details. Right? Is it going to be built into the JDK and the Java platform? No. I mean, there are certainly things we want to do at the level of the Java platform that can help, you know, AI, machine learning type applications, right? The ability, for instance, to support really small floating point types. You know, a lot of machine learning algorithms only need these weird 8-bit floating point types, and that's something that Panama will hopefully eventually address. You know, talking to vector processors and GPUs and things like that. All of that can help, but we're not trying to put machine learning into the platform itself.
But it's a trend that obviously.
Yeah, it's a trend that certainly influences when we think about, well, what features are more worth doing. Well, yeah, if this could help AI and machine learning, then that's definitely relevant.
This is Simon trolling you, I think. Do you think Java will remove serialization? If so, when? So I'm very interested in the answer to this question.
Well, let me tell you. So the thing about serialization is, it was a horrible mistake in 1997. I'm so sorry. It just, you know, what can I say? Some of us tried to fight it. It went in. There it is. We like to call serialization the gift that keeps on giving, right? And the type of gift that keeps on giving are security vulnerabilities. I don't know the stats offhand, but probably at least like a third of all the Java vulnerabilities have involved serialization. It could be over half. It's just an astonishingly fecund source of vulnerabilities. You know, not to mention just instabilities, and I just okay, don't. Yeah, well, you already got me started. I'll just restrain myself. No, this is something we definitely want to get rid of long term. You know, we've had to take measures to add. We added recently a filtering capability. So if you're using serialization and you're on a network and you have to accept untrustable serialization data streams, then there's a way for you to filter what classes they can mention, so that you can at least try to defend yourself. but yeah, I mean, it's shocking the number of reports we get of people running app servers on the network with unprotected ports that take serialization streams from anybody. Really? Okay. Why is this a Java bug? Well, it is. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? We should definitely do something about it. But yeah, I mean, serialization is also just brittle because it pokes into private field. It violates constructor invariance. It's just horrible in so many ways. The only thing appealing about it is that it's easy to use in simple use cases, and that's, I think, what motivated getting it in there. But now we do want to take it out. That's a long-term plan. That's one of the long-term goals of Project Amber that Brian Getz is leading. Once we have records, the Java version of data classes, then
you like data classes, do you?
You don't like that they're called records? Yeah, some people are uncomfortable with that.
You're not keen on that.
Yeah, well. So once we have records, part of the long-term vision is to have a new small clean serialization framework in the platform that can take a graph of records, and you can plug in a serialization engine of your choice, whether you want JSON or XML or YAML or old serialization format even. You plug in the engine of your choice to get the format that you want, and serialize records in a very safe way, because the records wouldn't allow you to violate constructor invariance.
So we were teaching.
But that, don't ask me what release that's going to be in, because
when it's ready.
When it's ready.
We were teaching serialization to new learners of Java in the Java user group in Seville. And so we go through Head First Java, the chapter on serialization, and the students are like, all right, I get it. I understand why you'd want to serialize, and I understand the mechanisms. And then right at the end, we say, but don't do it. Like, never do that.
Thank you,
you want to use JSON or something, like something, but understand the problems, understand the vulnerabilities, and understand that it's an appealing model, but it's a security nightmare for a start.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it in a really closed way, you know where all your streams are coming from. It's all controlled. You can deal with the brittleness. Then, okay, if you have to, but you're probably better off, using XML or JSON and the Jackson libraries or something.
What is the status of Project Valhalla, especially JEP 169? How realistic is it for this feature to be part of next Java releases later this year? Well, it's not going to go into 10, is it? 11. So yeah, what's the status of Valhalla? When's it coming?
It will come. It will come when it's ready. So Valhalla is a fascinating project. We knew going in that it was going to be hard and difficult. It's kind of it has a rough magnitude similar to that of Jigsaw. We're going to be making deep cuts in the system, in this case in the VM. And we've never done those kinds of cuts before. So we've spent several years on it now. Had an initial approach that looked kind of good, did some prototyping, further analysis, and okay, this is kind of complicated. It's got a bunch of problems. So there's this newer proposal. It's called, John Rose calls it L World. In fact, he posted just the last week or two a summary of how we got from the initial proposal to the L World proposal. It's much cleaner. It looks like it's more plausible. And this is just the nature of these big projects. You have to go through prototypes and figure things out. So there's some momentum there. We're working on it. There's some non-Oracle people helping out, but it's going to take a while to get that all sorted out. It certainly won't be in 11.
Right.
Will it be in 17, 3 years later? I don't know. It'd be great if it were, but
yeah, but it comes when it comes.
It comes when it's ready.
Yeah. I guess that's the luxury you get with the 6 monthly releases, is that you get to say, well, the release, when it's ready, it will come in that release. No. You don't have to force it. You don't have to.
Yeah, and we were chatting earlier today about this. I mean, the tension within the group of people who contributed to JDK 10, both inside and outside of Oracle, was just like, whoa, this was so calm. Because in the past, when we did these monster elephantine releases that were driven by 2 or 3 big features, and we would slip the big release until those features were done, and then small features had to wait. You get to the deadline and you've got small, important, interesting features, and people rush to get them in and sacrifice quality because they want to get in because they know it's going to be 3 years before their next opportunity to show. And that just leads to all kinds of bad consequences and bad behavior. And this time it's like, oh, okay, 6 months, that's fine.
Yeah, you could wait 6 months for the next one. I'm really not sure what to do with you, to be honest, because you're supposed to be asleep. That's why you're whining. So I'm feeding you more sugar because obviously that's the right answer to the baby that won't sleep. Or I could just like wave more toys at you, like we do with developers to keep them happy. Here, have some toys.
A seasoned developer advocate.
Here, have the var keyword. That'll keep you busy for 6 months. So again, on the release cadence, I guess you've probably answered this really. Public updates for JDK 11 will stop after 6 months. Public
updates from Oracle.
From Oracle will stop after 6 months. Impact on deployments to security and bug fixes is an issue. What is the plan to help the adoption rate?
That's like 1.5 questions.
It is like 1.5 questions. I guess we're seeing a thing with these questions, which is how is the new release cadence working? How does that impact? How is the long-term support? How does that work from Oracle's point of view? Yeah. Is everything going to be okay? That
I know. People are concerned, and that's totally understandable. And I tried to address that in the keynote yesterday, but it'll be okay. We all have some work to do, but it's work that's worthwhile because it will enable the future of the platform that benefits everybody.
Sorry. I'm going to stand up. No one can see me. Should be fine.
I can still see you.
I guess there's a couple of concerns. This is just me making it up. It wasn't. Are you really worried about Oracle's support of Java? I know you're not the only one. I guess there's 2 ways people are worried. Like maybe Oracle's not excited about Java anymore, with a lot of things going to OpenJDK, into the Jakarta Eclipse for the Java EE stuff. Maybe Oracle doesn't care. / maybe Oracle now wants to monetize this more, kind of thing. But I think that from what you're saying from the questions, it's more about, well, the rapid release cadence helps everyone, really. It helps you not have those deadlines. It helps us get features faster.
Yep.
And you can't do long-term support for all of those releases. It's just not a feasible thing to do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, some people in the ecosystem have talked about doing long-term support or medium-term support of non-LTS releases, and if they want to do that, they can go ahead and do that. That's, the thing about support is, so for many years it was basically provided for free by Sun and then Oracle. At least not interactive support, but stream of security fixes and other critical patches and things. And Oracle's business model is changing. The plan is that will no longer be true. It could change again. We'll have to see what happens. You will certainly be able to buy, a support contract from Oracle and get binaries that are identical to an OpenJDK build, except the license is different, and get support on those. But if you find that paying someone else for support or doing it yourself or just getting it from adopt-OpenJDK works better for you, that's another option that you have.
I think
in a way, I would say I'm not speaking for Oracle. I'm not authorized to speak for Oracle, but this is roughly a sort of rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing.
Yeah, I think seeing the OpenJDK adopt OpenJDK, be able to release versions of OpenJDK easily with their build farm and stuff.
Yeah,
that kind of makes
great
things,
stuff.
It opens things up to the community. It means things aren't closing down. We have more options.
And the other thing about their shift from Oracle's perspective is part of the reason we're doing that is so the Java team at Oracle can spend more time focusing on the future rather than just doing backports in how many old release lines.
Yeah. So. Makes sense. What are your thoughts about adding module versions to the module metadata that allow for module versions? Okay, that allow for apps to deploy multiple versions at runtime during upgrade, etc. So, like, obviously, the background is that the module system does not currently support the idea of versions, right? It's just this is your module with no version number.
Right. The The short answer to that is that if we did that today, you probably wouldn't like it. And the reason for that is that that's sort of so far outside the concepts that are supported by the popular build tools, right? Maven, Gradle, everything, they're all oriented around figuring out, what's the one artifact, the one version of a particular artifact, group ID, artifact ID that you download to put on the class path, because as we all know, multiple versions of the class path can be a complete disaster. So we could have multiple versions. I mean, technically we know how to do it, but it would be a lot of work for the tools to catch up with it. The other thing about supporting multiple versions at runtime is if we look at the experience of some of the non-platform module systems, they can lead to surprising kinds of errors, where you get class cast exceptions because you wound up in one of these diamond relationships where you had two versions of a module of a particular name, and somehow types from them meet, even though they were never supposed to. And you get code where you try to do, you take an instance of one thing and pass it in an instance of a type of, the same type, but from the other module of the other version, and boom, class cast exception, and they're really, really difficult to debug.
So the answer is you don't really want to provide.
Yeah, and thirdly, you just, if you have a system that needs multiple versions of the same thing, then that's a kind of code smell, right? You could probably make this better. You might have to make it better by contributing to some upstream project a little bit to help, mend some impedance mismatch. But you really, it'd be best to fix it
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you answered that one. With Oracle's donation of Java EE to Eclipse, do you see or expect any change in regards to OpenJDK and Java at large?
Don't expect any changes with OpenJDK. Oracle is still funding a team of significant size, so that's not changing. People ask me, "Oh, when's OpenJDK going to move to Eclipse?" It's like, no plans.
That's part of the deal, yeah.
That was completely unrelated.
Do you have data for the adoption rate for JDK 9? Are people really moving to the modular world? Those are actually two separate questions, I guess, because adoption of JDK 9 doesn't necessarily mean adoption of modularity.
That's true.
But so do you have any data for adoption of JDK 9? And do you have any information about are people moving to modularity?
Data on adoption rather than downloads is extraordinarily hard to come by. There are surveys such as like the ones that Turnaround used to do. There was a recent one. Sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the guy who did it. Baldwin, yeah, that. Which imagine a pie chart, and there's this giant red region, and that's 8, and then there are these little slivers of 6 and 7 and 9 and 10. 10 is like barely visible. So. And part of what's hard about those surveys, or at least interpreting them, is if the survey just asks, "Are you using Java 10?" There's one way to answer it. The survey, a survey should really ask at least a couple of questions. One is, are you developing with 10? Or are you testing with 10? With 10, are you deploying on 10? Because those are all different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, Joe and I did do those reports actually and surveys. I've recently joined a new company, and I'm doing a survey with the Java magazine.
Yeah, I answered it yesterday.
My current one. And yeah, that asks a similar question actually. It was what version of Java SE is your main app deployed in?
Yeah, no, I very much appreciated the clarity in that question, and I look forward to seeing the result.
So everyone make sure you fill that out.
But you did call IntelliJ IDEA the wrong thing, and you did misspell Team City.
I fixed both.
Just saying, man, while we're at it. Let's do a quick audience survey. Who's using something earlier than Java 6? Goodness. Java 6? Are you Android developers?
Yeah.
Sometimes you are. Okay. Java 7? Java 8? This is what we're seeing now, yeah. Java 9? Oh, good. Oh, you too, yeah, okay. Java 10? It's not bad, right?
So you said using. Did you mean?
Oh, sorry.
Did you mean
in production?
You mean you
Shall
meant
I
in
ask
production?
That all over again?
Or what? Did all of you answer that as in production?
Thank you for filling in the blanks. Oh, I'm sorry. So for the vJUG, most people are using Java 8. Some people are using Java 9, and a few people are using 10.
Yeah, the response in the room for those of you online was pretty much the pie chart that I described a moment ago.
And we feel sorry for people on Java 6. So sorry. So sorry. If you are Android developers, you should use Kotlin.
Shameless plug.
Do you see Java adopting functions as first-class citizens in the next 5 years?
Didn't we already do that, Nate?
I'm not really a functional programmer, so I'm not really sure what the difference is between functions as first-class citizens versus what we did. Maybe it means, can you write a file which has just functions and no classes, for example?
Well, yeah, that there are some ideas kicking around for that. What this question might mean is, will there ever be function types in the type system?
Right.
So that was definitely an area that we explored very deeply in Lambda, and eventually came to the conclusion that certainly no in 8, because we came up with this nifty idea of single abstract method classes, what are now called functional interfaces, were a really smooth way to fit Lambdas into Java pretty much as it stood. Changing the type system to have function types is a really, really deep change. It would be a significant change to the character of the language.
And the question is, what would be the benefit?
Would it kill it? Probably not, but it would make it more complex. So, in 8, we made the explicit decision not to go down that path. I wouldn't say that there will never be function types in Java, but I think it's pretty unlikely.
Whoever has to clean up this area afterwards, which will be me, is not going to have a good time. All right. 20 more minutes left. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, 18. It's only 18.
Simon, you want to take over in a minute? Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been
she really wanted
with
function
a baby
types
before, but I have never interviewed with a baby before, and apparently it's a little bit. Apparently you want to ask the question. Why don't you ask this one, Amy? This one is, it seems that the tool ecosystem, like spot bugs, is always, in inverted commas, behind the JDK releases. Are you going sideways? And this is ridiculous. I'm really good at multitasking. No, I'm not. It's terrible.
You're doing an amazing job.
She's doing a bad job at both of them. She's going to end up dead, and everyone's going, I don't even know what these questions are. What's that question about modularity? Total ecosystem. Tool ecosystem is always behind the JDK releases and don't work with the latest JDK. Any plans to improve that issue? So firstly, the tools are not always behind the JDK releases. Tools like IntelliJ IDEA do really well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And there are plenty of other open source libraries that do test against the early access releases early on, especially 9, which was a big change, in order to try and help that problem. But I guess the question is, what can Oracle do? What can the community do to try and improve that?
So in 9 in particular, we did a lot of outreach to all the major tools and IDEs and a lot of popular libraries to make sure they were aware, okay, these changes are coming, please follow along, here are some tips. If you have questions, please ask and so forth. And we had a lot of good interactions. I mean, the fact that Maven fairly quickly supported, basic compilation, basic building of a module was part of that effort. We spent lots of quality time with Robert Schulte and other Maven committers to get that done. So that was really good. So if a tool or library that you use is looks like it's lagging behind, well, you could ask them. You could ask them if you could help. You could contribute patches yourself if it's open source. So those are all good ways to help. At Oracle, we can't. Oracle's not going to fund 1,000 committers and 1,000 projects to go fix this stuff.
I think there's I mean, this is a particular rant that some of my friends go off on, which is that in our community, we are used to using free open source libraries, and they are free, and they are run by often individuals doing it in their own spare time. And if they don't have time to upgrade to the latest version, it's kind of, it sucks to be a user of that library, but you're going to have to help.
How much did you pay for it?
Exactly.
And I think it's good that people, I think this issue is coming to the forefront a bit in the last few years. People realizing that, like with the whole OpenSSL thing, that in some sense, a lot of the security of the internet rested on a couple of volunteers. What, really? Yeah. Let's get this properly funded. It's great that Linux Foundation is involved now and all that, but at the end of the day, if you really need something to be supported, you either need to do it yourself or pay someone else to do it for you, or just hope there's going to be volunteers that do that work. That's reality.
Yeah, I think it exposes a deeper problem with the community rather than a problem with, the community always being behind a JDK or anything like that. I think there's not always resources for that sort of thing. At one point, it was explicitly called out that the non-LTS versions, I can see there's a theme in these questions, the non-LTS versions were not considered production-grade JREs. Is this still true?
Who said that?
I don't know. At one point, it was explicitly called out.
Explicitly called out, not by anyone involved in OpenJDK that I know of, or anybody who works for Oracle.
So the answer is no. The non-LTS versions are production.
The non-LTS versions are just as production ready as the LTS versions. The only difference is the support timeline. So,
do you think someday Java will have extensions the same as Swift extensions, for example?
Or perhaps Kotlin extensions?
I didn't ask
just
that question.
Saying, maybe, but it doesn't seem like the most compelling language improvement we could do. There are a limited number of people in the world, whether they're at Oracle or not, who can work on language and VM issues. I won't say no, but
it's not high up.
If I controlled the global budget for innovation in the JDK on the part of everyone all over the world who works on it, that would not be at the top of my list.
And we still have some questions, but I thought I'd ask you if you've got anything, or do you want me to ask the audience before we go to the last
we
few?
We have a few extra from Duke on. That you can.
That's a long question.
Probably that first half of it.
Okay. Why does Oracle not provide ARM builds for JDK 9 or 10? IoT is the future. Sorry, I'm reading that in a facetious way. I'm sorry. I can't help it. Oracle even provides courses on how to install it on the Raspberry Pi, etc. But why doesn't Oracle provide ARM builds for 9 and 10?
Because you can build them yourself, or you can get them from someone else.
Okay. Is it a matter of resources from trying to create the build point of view? Or?
It's a matter of priorities. Look, publishing a build is more than just you've got to
add on to the Travis thing.
Yeah, it's not just configure your CI system to spit out another binary and then just slap it on a download site, right? You have, if you're going to do that, you need to be willing to take a certain amount of responsibility for that, and that's not a small obligation. So, code's there. You can build it yourself, get it from other places.
Anything in the audience?
There, Rabea.
Hi, what are the biggest influences for the future of Java?
The biggest influences for the future of Java.
Do you mean are they going to steal ideas from other languages, or do you mean
absolutely
ideas from the community? That's
absolutely.
Where do you get the influences? What influences did this make about Java?
Well, that's a really broad question. So for 20 odd years now, Java's been driven largely by two things: improving developer productivity and improving performance in in the general context of software and hardware technology. So a lot of what drives the direction of innovation is changes in hardware, changes in developer and deployer expectations, changes in application areas. You know, 5 years, you know, certainly 10 years ago, nobody really cared much about big data or machine learning, for example. So a lot of it is about following trends in an artful way, considering what abstractions are missing from the platform, figuring out what they are, and then trying to fit them into the platform so that they look like they've always been there. You know, sometimes that's, you know, sometimes we're more successful at that than not, just based on the nature of the problem. Java has never been a language or platform at the very cutting edge of software platforms, and that's a good thing. That it was never designed for that. There's a phrase I like to use that's sort of the model for how Java evolves, and that's selective sedimentation. So, you know, it's great to see C#, Scala, Kotlin, Clojure, you know, exploring all kinds of ideas that would be too radical for Java. You know, see what they do, see what the experience is, learn from those, and then consider, oh well, you know, maybe that is something that should sediment down into the Java platform. So, you know, and there are decisions both large and small that have been taken that way. You know, some of them are sort of, you know, syntaxy bike sheddy things like, oh, that lambda arrow should have been, you know, equals arrow or dash arrow, and you know, we went with dash because that was familiar from C#. But there are also, you know, lots of very deep technical decisions that are influenced by where other things go. That was a bit of a riff. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
I had a related question in my session today, actually, which is that if Java's going to adopt interesting ideas from other languages, like presumably they meant lambda expressions and var keyword and that sort of thing, but adopt it in a, I can't remember what the phraseology was, in a less than optimal way, i.e. using final var instead of val var, whatever.
Right.
Does that make, is Java going to wither away and die, and the JVM is just left, or is it a good thing for Java to take take those features and make them more Java-y, for better or for worse?
So, you know, the final var thing, you know, that's an example of fitting an abstraction in a way that fits with everything that was already there. You know, and it's an interesting story because going into that, I remember chatting with Brian, and we're thinking, well, is it var or is it var and val, and you know, and we kind of expected that project to wind up with both. That was kind of our natural going in inclination. But thinking about it more and realizing that, for example, well, in a language like Kotlin, which is, you know, has been, you know, was greenfield at the start, you know, var is how you declare a field as well. So you kind of need it for that. And so you need val to make a nice distinction. Kotlin doesn't have a final keyword. That totally makes sense. In Java, var is, you know, you remember the title of the feature is a local variable type inference. In the context of one method, you know, since you're never going to use var to declare a field or it's something that's global in any way, in the context of one method, okay, yeah, I know there are some people who like to write, you know, inside a method, you know, final int I equals whatever, and yeah, you can do that. I don't think it really gains you very much. So being able to write val versus var inside a method didn't seem worth it. If you really want to type final var, you can, and that's the story.
Well, one question here. How much time do we have left?
6.5.
So when working on JVM, do you actually take cost into consideration as well when thinking about optimizations?
Sorry, do we actually take
Kotlin into consideration, how it impacts Kotlin?
Or other JVM languages?
Or other JVM languages?
Yes, absolutely. No, but part of the vision for years has been the JVM. There are aspects of the JVM architecture that are tied to the language, for better or for worse. But especially given that there are all these other languages on top of the JVM in the ecosystem, we don't ever want to design a JVM feature that ties the JVM to the language any more than is absolutely necessary, and always make it possible to not have to use that if you're implementing some other language, because that's part of the health of the entire ecosystem.
Very quickly, other than Java, what would your favorite language be, whether through syntax or design?
Language in general, or language on the JVM? Language on the JVM would be Clojure. Good stuff. Check it out. The parentheses won't kill you, really. The language in general, I haven't written it yet. Someday, after I retire, that'll be my project.
Is there anything going on with fibers or with fibers like
yes,
routines?
Yes, there is.
What is it?
Project Loom in OpenJDK, being led by Ron Pressler, with whom I'm having dinner tonight, by the way. So yeah, that's moving along. They've got some initial prototypes. That's another project that makes some interesting changes in the VM. They're not as deep as Valhalla, but I think it will be a real boost to be able to have things that look an awful lot like threads but are orders of magnitude cheaper. That's going to do a lot for concurrent programming.
A bit of a left field question, but is it possible to see in the future that we won't be writing code so much, machines will be generating it? It's more important to infer the behavior when things go wrong. So it's not so much about developer productivity for creating, but the productivity for understanding. Will that change your view on how you develop the language?
So I could certainly see in future having tools that use machine learning or whatever to help you diagnose problems. I think those are outside the bounds of a programming platform. Would the existence of such tools influence the design of the language? I hope not. I mean, a programming language is for writing texts that are for people for other humans to read, and oh, by the way, for computers to execute or analyze. And as long as we still need to write code ourselves, I think that will remain true. And but if you're in some scenario where you've got a machine learning system somehow generating code, I mean, if it's just going to spit out Java bytecodes that are incomprehensible to humans, well, that could be okay, I suppose. But good luck debugging it.
Okay, so we'll finish it there actually because I think we started a little bit late, although it says 2 minutes left. In courtesy of the conference and the next speaker, we'll finish it there. So
okay.
Massive, please come on.
Yeah, let's say goodbye to Amy.
Yeah. So first of all, a big thank you to everyone in the audience and online for your questions. Big thank you to Mark for answering them, and
my pleasure.
A huge thank you to Trish. I have no idea how you do it, Trish. I have 2 kids, and it's hard enough for me leaving them at home and coming here, let alone having to actually have a child here. It must be so much.
I'm glad the bigger one wasn't here. That would have just made life a lot more difficult.
Awesome. So thank you very much. Thank you for everyone on the vJUG for joining, and here we'll continue with Devoxx, and on the vJUG we'll see you next time. Thank you.